What is going on, folks? Welcome to Create and Destroy. I'm your host, Dan Donnarumma, and in the words of my man Obi-Wan Kenobi, hello there. This is episode number 6, and shitballs am I excited about today's episode. My guest for you today is Thom Wasluck. Thom is the man behind Planning for Burial. If you've never heard Planning for Burial before, first off, you're straight tripping and slipping, so get on top of that. But if you've not listened to Planning for Burial before, his music is a mixture of these different types of genres, and he does it so masterfully. So it's a mixture of like metal, gloom, slowcore, drone, post-punk, post-rock, ambient. There's probably some goth mixed in there as well. It's all these different genres that Thom brings together and creates the sound that is just so unique, so Planning for Burial. And I really can't think of any other band that sounds like what Thom is putting together with Planning for Burial. It's just really awesome. I won't lie, I'm a pretty big Planning for Burial fan. If you haven't noticed the artwork for this show, I'm wearing a Planning for Burial shirt. And so when Thom agreed to do this interview with me, I was super freaking excited. And what's awesome is I've been following Thom on Tumblr for some time now, and I would send him messages picking his brain about his music, and he was always so quick to respond to me, and just super nice guy to interact with. And in April, I was getting this show together, and I was thinking, yeah, I would love to have Thom come on this show. And so I messaged him on Tumblr, and he responded to me super quickly and said, absolutely, dude. I'm going to be playing a show in June in Wilkes-Barre. You should come down to the show, and then we could do an interview after that. And that's exactly what I did. So the show was on a Friday. I drove straight to Wilkes-Barre from work, checked into my hotel, got some dinner, went to a beer distributor, because in Pennsylvania, the beer laws are weird, especially compared to New York State, where I could go to Wegmans and cop some beer, and their beer selection is freaking incredible. They got basically every beer that you could imagine. But I go to this beer distributor, there's nothing but shit beers, and it's nothing but cases of them. I find a cooler, and the only good option for me, because it's nothing but like Natty Ice and Coors Light and Bud Light, just a bunch of shit beers, was Jenny, which is a brewery from Rochester. So I saw that, and it was like in a goddamn movie where the light shines on the beer and I hear people singing in the background. That's exactly how I felt when I saw Jenny. And it was 94 cents, so cheaper than a goddamn bottle of water. I copped a couple of those, headed over to the venue, and then I got to see a really great show. Doghouse Charlie played. They were super awesome. Totally reminded me of Pygmy Lush, and I love Pygmy Lush. Then Autumn Pool played, and damn, dude, that dude's set was super intense, super loud. I wasn't expecting it to be as loud as it was, and man, it was really great. And then Thom played a set. It was his first like quiet or subdued set that he played in several years. And what was even cooler was that he played several songs that I'd never seen him play before. So that was a really cool show for me to see. The next day, Thom came over to my hotel. We sat down, recorded our interview, and it was really fun. We talked about his time at Meltdown Festival. He recently got to play there, and I think that's so awesome. You know, Robert Smith curated that festival and handpicked Planning for Burial to play, which is so freaking cool. Thom also played this year Roadburn Festival, and we talked about that experience for him. We also talked about Below the House. I talked about this a little bit last week. Below the House came out in March of 2017. That's a time where it's kind of rough for me, and I talked about that, like I said, a little bit last week. So that album came out, and it really helped me get through a tough time, and I connected with that album immediately, and it's become an absolute favorite of mine. And from start to finish, that album is just incredible, and it is a freaking roller coaster ride of emotions, and it's a fabulous album. So we talked about that album, and to say that I was excited after our interview would definitely be an understatement. I was super excited. I mean, I think it's awesome that, you know, Planning for Burial, Thom is one of my favorite musicians, and I really enjoy his music, and I was able to sit down with someone who is putting out really great music, inspiring me, and just someone that I think is doing something really cool, really unique. So, that's what I set out with this podcast to do, and I think it's awesome that in the very early going, I got to sit down and speak with one of my favorite musicians. So here's my interview with Thom. Hope you enjoy. All right, Thom, what's going on?
Not much. Late.
Yeah. How you doing this morning?
A little rough.
Now, you grew up around here, right? You grew up in Wilkes-Barre?
Well, yeah, I don't actually live in Wilkes-Barre proper. I live up in Mountaintop, Pennsylvania, but it's just kind of easier to say Wilkes-Barre because everyone's like, the city. But going to shows and everything, you're so close. Yeah, I was from here.
How far is Mountaintop from here?
Probably about 5-10 minutes, maybe a little bit more. It's just right up the road, so it's...
I lived in Tannersville. I don't know if you know where Tannersville is.
I know where Tannersville is.
Yeah, so I lived there for a good chunk of my teenage years, and I would come to shows at Wilkes-Barre all the time. So I'd go to shows in Wilkes-Barre, Bethlehem, Allentown. I'm trying to think where else. And this was like early 2000s that I was going to shows around there. And in retrospect, the scene at that time was really vibrant. I saw a lot of awesome bands and a lot of really cool bands that would come through on tour.
Yeah. See, I didn't really go to Bethlehem or Allentown too much, but like I do now. And that was the thing. Like growing up in Wilkes-Barre, when I was growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had like 2 or 3 venues here that just constantly had good, like, I would call them bigger scene bands. They weren't big bands really, but like they were like, when you think about it as a kid, like this band's huge, but in terms, they might even be just on my level where I am just like, oh yeah, we're just going to hit up some DIY spaces, but they always came through. And so you got to see a lot of diverse stuff. And a lot of times it was always like mixed bag bills too. So that was always awesome. You'd have like a grindcore band with like some weirdo folk band and stuff playing the same show. And that was awesome.
Yeah, I spoke with a friend of mine recently. We did an interview and we were talking about how like diversity in shows. And I feel like there were definitely times when I was younger, there would be some diversity for shows. But then I felt like there was a good space of time where it was just like the same types of bands that would play. And I feel like diversity of shows, like the show last night was awesome. And I feel like it makes for much more unique, much more fun shows.
And that's why I kind of picked that lineup last night because one, all of them were friends, and I wanted to see them myself. But yes, it was that too. But yeah, I remember there was a good time there. It was just like it's the deathcore night, So you'd get like 6 bands that were all exactly the same, and I was like, you guys are cool, but like I want something else. Like I don't want to listen to. Oh, you just played that same riff, before, so.
Do you say Wilkes-Barre, Wilkes-Barre, or maybe even, I used to hear weirdos say Wilkes-Barre?
It's never Wilkes-Barre.
Never Wilkes-Barre.
Never Wilkes-Barre. I call it Wilkes-Barre, and you can call it Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah,
Sometimes it will come out depending on who I'm talking to or how quickly I'm talking about. Wilkes-Barre will come out, but it's usually Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah, I would hear it get called so many different things. And I want to talk about Meltdown because you recently played Meltdown. How was that?
My mind is still actually like blown with that, really. I'm not talking shit on anything, but in comparison to doing Roadburn and Meltdown, Roadburn's a fest. Like, it's all day going. I was a little more stressed out for it because I didn't know what kind of gear I was going to have. And I was doing sound check while people were coming into the venues. That was a little more stressful. Those shows were awesome. I loved playing Roadburn and all that. But Meltdown, it was just it was like, they call it a fest, but it's more like a bunch of mini shows every day. So you got to get there, have sound check, relax, get everything like exactly where you need it, and then go play. So that was really nice about it.
And did you play different? Because you played Sunday and Monday night,
Yes.
right? Did you play 2 different sets or were the same set each night?
Pretty much the same set. I had to cut a song for the second night. So,
What went through your head when you found out that you were going to be taking part in Meltdown?
I didn't even believe it, honestly. And I constantly, and I still do now because I never got, an answer about it, but I constantly keep thinking, how? Like, where did he find me? This is that. Was I just like somebody on a list given to him and be like, here, this might be something good for you? But I've seen people post on like Twitter and stuff like, oh, I was just walking down the street and Robert was next to me and I was like, hey, thanks. And he started talking to me about playing for Burial. I was like, all right, so I was actually picked. So that's pretty ridiculous. But I don't know how he found me or anything.
That's so cool. Because, he handpicked all of those bands, right?
Handpicked, yep.
Which is so... Did you get to meet him?
I did not.
That would have been awesome as fuck.
The 2 nights I was there, they said there was a possibility he could be at any of the shows, but I never got to meet him. And that's all right. I really wanted to, but just being handpicked was probably the best.
Yeah, I feel like if I were a band that was picked to play in that fest or the show, I would have been like, holy shit, this is incredible. The fact that Robert Smith is listening to my music, this is awesome.
Right, and that's exactly the thought. But I'm still like, how?
Yeah.
Because I made jokes to like all the guys helping like set up the stage and stuff. I was like, I'm going back to America and I'm going to play a bunch of like punk venues and houses and stuff. And this is like fucking ridiculous.
Oh God, I'm sure, man.
So...
And I'm assuming you got to watch some bands play when you were there, right?
Not really, because like I said, it wasn't like a fest. It was like each night there was 3 venues, and each night there was like 2 performers playing it. So I got to see Emma Ruth Rundle, and I got to see Loop those nights, and I walked in on all sets sound checking.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love mono. And I was like, man, if I could be at that show playing for Burial, Emma Ruth Rundle, mono definitely.
Well, and that was the thing. I didn't want to take too much time off of work, and turns out I was off this week anyways, so we could have stayed longer. I wanted to see like the Deftones and Low. There was tons of bands I wanted to see, but I ended up coming home. So
yeah, have you ever been to England prior to that?
Yes, but it's been about 6 years.
Nice. And did you enjoy your time? Did you get to like explore around?
Yes.
Because you were in London, right?
Yeah, we did London, and the first time I went through, I did London, and I went up to Norwich for a while too. So, yeah, I love that city. I don't know, there's just a vibe about it that I just love being there.
Yeah, I haven't gone. My wife Danielle has been there before, and she said that she loved London. So that's on the list of places I got to go.
We did the first times I've went. I didn't do like any of the touristy stuff. I literally just hung out in dive bars and went to shows with my friends. I played one show with borrowed guitars and amps. This is 6 years ago. So this time I was like, I brought my girlfriend with me. She really wanted to see the city. And we just walked around and did the touristy thing. And it was cool. And we just ate a lot of food from the area and went record shopping and then would go over to the shows and get ready for those each night. So it was nice.
Nice. That sounds like an awesome time.
Yeah, it was just relaxing.
And since we're on the topic of festivals, and you mentioned Roadburn, you got to take part in Roadburn this year. Have you played in the past or no?
Roadburn, no, that's my first time going.
And what was that experience like for you? You mentioned it was kind of stressful.
It was stressful, and it was only like I played out of the 4 days I was there. I played 3 of them because I did a set with Sonhet. I did my own bigger set, and then I did a smaller set. And it was just more stressful about, all right, my gear's set here in this venue, because it's a little more spread out through the town. So I'd have my gear in one spot. I had to figure out what amps I was using. So to me, like, if I don't know how the amps are going to sound sometimes when borrowing it, that's something that gets me a little stressed out. And I did say to some people, I'm like, I think I would have loved Roadburn more if I only played one day, or if I was just like going to visit and just like go to shows. It's a big festival.
Where was it again?
Tilburg, Netherlands.
Yeah, and like, how do you send your gear over there that you need?
Well, I flew over with a pedal board and a guitar and a book bag with like a sampler and some things in it, and then they have backline stuff. So that's why it was stressed out, because it was amps I've never used before. So I had to figure it out. But the second show there, I had a nice combination of amps, and that's how I kind of picked my amps for Meltdown. So I relaxed a little bit.
Nice. I'm not a big festival guy because just the amount of people, like, it's so crazy.
And I think that was it too. It was just like very overwhelming and stuff. And I was there alone, but there was lots of people I knew there, like that were there, and I would hang out with. But that's why the Meltdown one was a little different, because it was just like a chill show. It wasn't like there was like a couple thousand people walking around the city all trying to get into one like small like venue. Like, oh, this stage only holds 700 people, but there's about 300 or 3,000 trying to get in there and to see them, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I remember when the full lineup for that festival was announced, I was like, holy shit, this is insane.
Oh,
and like I said, I'm not a big festival guy, but I was like, damn, this is a festival I would like to be at.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, too, it's such a crazy festival, and there's so many good bands, and it was scattered out through the city a little bit, so you're going to miss bands. And that was like the hardest part.
Did you have a favorite set or act that you got to see during that festival?
That festival, I actually reference. And I know they're my friends, and I've seen them like a million times. But just like thinking about the first time I saw them in 2011 in a living room in California, to being on that stage and just like the lights and the sound and how much they've even progressed as a band and writers, I was just like, this is ridiculous. They were my absolute favorite.
I have yet to see them, and damn, I want to see them so bad. Their last record was absolutely incredible.
Well, I think you might have better chances, because I think one of them is moving to New York City in August.
That would be awesome, man.
But yeah, they're and that's the thing, exactly. Their last album, it's just like leaps and bounds above what they've already done, and I've loved everything they've already done. So just, I don't know, just seeing friends also at this festival doing it, I was just like, this is ridiculous. They were so amazing.
Nice. And so I think I know the answer to this question. You kind of alluded to it. Would you rather play a festival or like a more intimate type of show?
Probably a more intimate type show. The festivals are cool because you have more chances of like, I know Netherlands, I know a lot of people came from England. They came from all over to see it. So that was pretty nice, but I don't know. I like more intimate shows. It's just my feel. But the thing was is about the two sets I played at Roadburn were kind of intimate, because one was a church stage, but it was still like a ton of people in there. So
nice. And so we talked briefly about the show last night. You had done a like quiet set, and you and I talked briefly about your definition of quiet versus mine. And that was the first time you did like a more subdued quiet set in a couple of years, right? What made you want to do a set like that? Well,
I know the record was coming out. It was getting released on LP, so I kind of wanted to do something around that. And I needed to change it up a little bit. Because I've been playing, when I play Wilkes-Barre a lot, I don't play it a lot, but I've been doing kind of the same set. I might switch things out. So I just wanted to try to do something different. And I felt like that venue was a perfect spot to do it. It's a pretty new venue, too. So I remember going to like opening night there and be like, yeah, this is the place I'd like to do this at.
Yeah, that was a really cool venue.
Yeah.
I also liked that it was bring your own beer. That was awesome.
Yes.
I went to some place and I found Genesee beer, which is like a Rochester beer. I was like, all right, here we go. This is my jam.
Yeah, my buddy that was there last night grew up around Rochester, and he lives in Binghamton now, but he's a diehard Jenny guy.
I'm not like a big Jenny guy, but when the place I went to, they didn't have a lot of cold beers, and when I saw Jenny, I was like, all right. It was only 94 cents for a tall boy. I was like, that's freaking nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Last night is a perfect example of why I really love your music, because it's like when people ask me about Planning for Burial who have never heard your music before, and I try to explain it to them, I wound up saying it's like this amalgamation of all these different types of genres that kind of just coalesce into this really cool sound. And you have songs like Whiskey and Wine that are totally just like in your face, super abrasive. And then you have songs like Boring Domesticated Life, which are more subdued type of songs.
Right.
When you first started creating music as Planning for Burial, was that your intention? Did you want to create the sound that was just all these different genres kind of coming together?
The best answer I can give you for that is no. It's all experimentation. I was just trying to make music that I liked listening to. I mean, it took a while, to get to that point, but I started recording when I was like probably 11. And I think when Planning for Burial started, I was like 21. So it was just a lot of like karaoke machine recordings and 4-track. So it was just who I was. I don't know. I'm an avid music buyer. I actually have an obsession, like I really do. And I buy all kinds of music. I listen to all kinds of music. So sometimes I'll listen to things and be like, oh, that's where I got that idea from. But I don't know. It was never a conscious thing. It was just, here it is.
Yeah, as I've gotten older, my taste in music has broadened very much so from when I was younger. And I've found that the bands that I tend to like now are just bands that are doing real, I don't want to say weird things, but just they're kind of breaking genres and kind of bringing stuff from other genres, and they have a unique sound. And I feel like Planning for Burial is a perfect example of that. Just all these different types of sounds that really make up an awesome experience.
Well, I appreciate that, but I know my friends and I were having a talk last night when they came back to the house that we, my big thing when I'm listening to music now is I don't want to know how it was made. If I can't figure out how it was recorded and I can't figure out where the chord progressions are going, I'm in love with it. I mean, not to say that I don't like just like cool pop stuff. That's just like, all right, here comes this chord change. I still love that stuff, but the bands like now that I'm like loving, it's just like wild shit that I cannot comprehend.
So when you're listening to music, are you sitting there breaking down, okay, how did they do this? How did they do that?
Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll listen to an album completely for a while. Like, I'll listen to an album for years and never even think about that. And one day I'll be listening, I'm like, how did they do that? I do try to do it. It's just the way my brain works.
So if let's say you're listening to something and you find it interesting, you're like, man, maybe I want to try to incorporate whatever I was just listening to into my music. Do you like listen to that and try to figure it out? Do you do some research on the internet?
No, I listen to it and that's about it. And I try to use my own memory to figure out like, oh, how'd they do it? But I don't actually sit and like, okay, I'm going to go look up this interview with them and figure out how to do it. I do read a lot of that stuff, but I don't like consciously. It's just in the library of my brain. I don't actually like, well, I'm going to record this weekend. Let's see how they do it. Because the way I've been recording is like, I don't know when I'm going to have time. I might have 10 minutes this day. I can do some stuff. So there's not time to do research really. So it's any reading I've done or anything.
Do you write and record very often?
No, I really don't. The way my job's been, I'm an apprentice and I have to go to school for that now. Living with my parents right now and not having all my gear set up. It's just, I will constantly walk around the house and my room with my acoustic guitar noodling on stuff, but I haven't finished anything. It's just the way it is.
When I first discovered Planning for Burial years back, I had no clue it was just you. And then I discovered that it was just you, and I was blown away by that. And then I was even more blown away by the fact that you play all your music live as well, which I was completely dumbfounded by that because I was like, how the fuck does this guy do all that stuff? How did you learn how to take what you recorded and what you created and perform it live by yourself?
It was a learning process because my first album, Leaving, was already clearly out. And I started thinking like a couple of years after it came out, I want to do live shows. But I'm like, how am I going to do it? So technically the second album, Desideratum, came out of that, like, how am I going to do it live? And it was a completely different process live. I used to actually sit with the drum machine live, loop, and I did everything built from the ground up live. And it's a little boring in my mind. So like through the tour for Desideratum, I started thinking about like, how can I use samplers? How can I do this so I could just trigger things and just actually perform while also still doing live looping for things? So it was a process of a few years, and now I'm at a point now I'm like, well, I'm kind of doing this. How can I do anything a little different? So that's where my brain's going now.
Was it tough, like figuring out all the components that you needed to make sure you had a good live sound?
I don't think so. I think, again, that stuff just kind of like through time came kind of naturally. I mean, anything that's even looped and everything, I had to play again. I didn't really go back to the session files and take things off of there and being like, well, here it is.
So when you first started making music, did you intend to perform things live, or was it like, did you intend to even perform stuff live?
No, not at all. And that's why I'm saying, like, the first album, Leaving, was done, out, and then a few later, I think I played one show right before it came out, like for a friend's thing, and it was more like a drone set. And then I didn't do anything again for almost 2 years because there was, like I said, there was no real idea to do it. And somebody emailed me once, be like, oh, do you want to come up and play this show? And I'm like, well, I got to figure out how and what I could do. And I didn't want to be like that band that like stands at my laptop, has that playing the tracks, and then sang along to it. I was trying to think of stuff that could be like physically pleasing for myself to do and for, you know, to watch as an audience member.
Were you playing in other bands at that point in time when you were first starting Planning for Burial?
Yeah, I was just in a really shitty metalcore band. Because most of the time I felt like anybody I knew who wanted to be in the bands were just like that kind of stuff. And I was still in my early 20s, so I was just like, okay, I'll do that. And then I'd be at practice, be like, you guys want to hear these recordings I'm doing? And the drummer in that band was just like, because he was in some weirdo like psych Mars Volta type band. He's like, this stuff's awesome. But everybody else in the band's like, no, just bring those breakdowns.
I remember metalcore was so big, and like when I was in my teenage years, so again, like the early 2000s around here, there was so many like metalcore bands that were
in here. Yes,
yeah.
That at that point, I was in New Jersey doing it, but I knew people out here that were like in those bands, and that was like the time frame too, where it was like, all right, we're putting 5 of the same band on a bill.
Yep. So. Yeah, I felt like there was a shit ton of metalcore bands in like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Long Island. There was a lot of metalcore bands as well. Because even because I moved from Pennsylvania to Long Island, and there's a shit ton of metalcore bands there as well.
I mean, it was fun. I think that band played only like 3 or 4 shows, but it was what it was.
When you go on tour or you play a show, right? The songs that you play, do you have an idea ahead of time how you're going to play it? Is it always a strict rendition of how you've written it?
Now it kind of is because of the way the samples and the loops are. I've thought about being like, all right, on this bank it's this version, and then this bank I'll do a different version just to see. But yeah, right now it kind of is the same, but I might try to drone things out of them a little bit differently, or like I was joking around with the song Warmth of You when it comes in like with the bigger part. It's very just rock, and when I was at soundcheck at Meltdown, I was doing black metal riffs over it, and my girlfriend was laughing. But I was just like, so right now it is strict rendition. So,
do you like? How do you decide how you're gonna play a song? When you're playing it, do you ever just kind of go with it and see what happens, or is it like, yeah, I'm just gonna stick to exactly how I practice this or I plan to play it?
I think it's more comfortable for me just to do now how it was. The older like Desert Ratum tour, when it was like when I was doing all the live drum looping and everything, and then building, I could slow it down, I could speed it up. So I used to do stuff like that a little more, or I wouldn't go into this part right away, or I might just completely bypass a part. I used to do that a little bit more. But again, having to do the live looping and stuff, it wasn't like I couldn't perform as much. So I've stuck to just knowing my parts where I need to hit samples. And sometimes I miss a sample, and if I don't hit it at the right time, it's done. Like I gotta like hurry up and get the volume down because it's gonna come in so late or off that it's gonna be totally fuck with me. So that's the aspect of it. And I still do like a lot of guitar live looping to build up parts. So that too. I mean, maybe I do like not Blow the House, but Dull Knife Part 2 is pretty much all live looping. So that I could drone out some parts a little bit more and stuff.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw you, I didn't expect to see, because I had read some stuff about your pedal board, and I didn't expect to see like your pedal board as big as it was. And then seeing you constantly, going from one pedal to the next, I'm assuming it's just kind of like trial and error, right? Kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, right? When creating your live show, just figuring out what you need to do when you need to do it.
Yeah, I guess at this point now it's muscle memory. Because Cody from Autumn Pool was laughing at me. He was like, "Did you practice?" I was like, "No, not really." I go, "I've been playing this set for a while now, but last night's set I haven't been playing, so I did practice that quite a bit. But it's muscle memory now." And I also have it down where I have the big board in the US, but I had the small board for all the taking on flights. So I had to get used to like, all right, I don't have this thing now. How am I going to do this part? Stuff like that.
Is the board that you played with last night like your go-to board at this point? Is there other pedals that you may switch out or swap with other pedals?
Actually, last night was a swap out. I did take a bunch of things off. Because when I flew to Netherlands, I had to make the small board of all bare essentials. I knew Meltdown was coming up, and I had a couple shows in early June. So I was like, I'm not going to build the big board again just to break it down and go to Meltdown. And so I just kept it. But not last night, but the night before, I was like, looking at the board, I'm like, oh, I could take this. Ooh, excuse me. I could take this off. I could do this. I could do that. And so last night was a little bit of like going through my collection and be like, all right, this one will go here and this one will, but it was mostly my normal board.
How many pedals do you have?
I don't know. I really don't. I rarely sell anything unless even if I get something and it never goes on the board, but I like it enough, I keep it. But if there's stuff I get and I'm like, I'm never going to use this, I'll sell it. But that's a rarity. I lost count. I honestly did. And I have doubles of things.
How often do you buy new pedals?
I've slowed down quite a bit, but once in a while, like I'll like some of the Facebook like amp forums and stuff, they'll mention something like, "Oh, this on Amazon you can get this $30 Big Muff Russian clone," and it's like I said, $30. I'm like, "All right, I'll get it," and I will get it, and I'm like, "This is not good on guitar, but it's great on bass, so I'll keep it."
Yeah, I think I heard you talking to one of the dudes from Doghouse Charlie last night about like some kind of like knockoff pedal.
He has like it was one of his pedals. Like Joyo makes them, and they're like cheap Japanese pedals that you can get for like $20-$30, but they sound awesome.
That's so awesome. What is a favorite song of yours to perform live?
I think Warmth of You lately has been my favorite because I feel like in terms of dynamics, it's the way I like it. It's got the droning, it's got the driving bass line, and it's kind of like chill here, and then it steps up. I don't know. It's just a quick song. I just enjoy that one.
Yeah, I love that song. Now, I do want to talk about Below the House, and I read that you started recording, or at least developing the songs that would be on that record in March of 2015. Is that correct?
That's when I started recording them.
Oh, you started recording them. Yeah. So when did you start like writing and putting those songs together?
Pretty much August in 2014.
Wow.
Because I had just got done touring off Desideratum. I found out I was moving back to Pennsylvania like in a day. I went and took my test to try to get into this apprenticeship. I took it on a Tuesday. Thursday night said, "Hey, are you working?" I said, "No." "Would you like to work?" "Sure." "When?" "Tomorrow." So I packed up a bag and came right out to Pennsylvania. I was working during the week, going home to Jersey on the weekend, packing up my house, and then slowly moving stuff out. So I had guitars here. My girlfriend wasn't living out here yet, so I literally just sat in my room playing guitar all the time. So that's where like a lot of that started.
And not to kind of go back to this, but I've heard you mention apprenticeship a few times. What kind of apprenticeship are you in?
I am in the Heat and Frost Insulators Union.
So is it like HVAC?
No, well, we cover HVAC.
Oh, okay.
We do all the installation on it.
Gotcha.
So I do industrial, I do commercial.
Shit, so you've been in that for a few years though now.
Yeah, I'm about to start my 5th year of my apprenticeship.
Nice. So you started putting together and writing songs that would become songs for Below the House prior to, so 2014, right?
Yeah.
And then you started recording in March 2015.
Yes.
So with your other albums, did that process take as long? I'm assuming no.
Well, leaving, give or take, took about 2.5, 3 years because I was just always right. I mean, I actually just recently went through all those hard drives and found tons and tons of stuff I just recorded. Not finished stuff, like, oh, here's just a guitar line and a quick drum beat, like things like that. So I was always just working, and it kind of like, as time went on, I start making like a track listing, and that's where it came from. Desideratum was pretty much done for years, but it was like I only played it live, and I was like, I'm never going to record this. So when it got time to recording it, I did it in like 3 months or so. So because all the songs were there. So yeah.
The first time I listened to Below the House, I like right away was just like, I was blown away by that album. It's like, holy shit. And I knew that was going to be an album that I would fall in love with. When you first listened to the finished product of Below the House, what did you think of that record?
I still listen. I mean, I listen to it. I'm not one of those people who are like, I don't listen to my own music, because I make music for myself, first of all. And I think that's the one of my own that I listen to the most still. I still enjoy it. And I think that's a little bit why I haven't been working on new material as much, because I'm still enjoying playing the songs live. I still like listening to them. I sat on the record for months before I even gave it to Flenser. And so I just had it to myself for a long time.
Did you... Because I remember at the end of last year seeing it on a ton of like best of, and I'm a cornball, and I put out like my list, and that was my favorite album of last year, and I saw it was on a bunch of other like best ofs. Did you expect it to be as well received as it was?
Honestly, I wasn't sure, because I go back to the last album, Desideratum, and so those are some of my favorite songs. But I was in a total weird headspace, and I didn't record them as well as I could have. They didn't have the dynamics they needed. Like, songs from that I actually revamped for the live show, just so they could kind of fit in with the Below the House stuff. But no, I didn't. I mean, I knew people were enjoying it, but I really don't know. I didn't know. I don't expect things like that. It's easier just to put it out in the world and see what happens.
What kind of goes through your head when you are releasing music out into the world?
I don't know. That's a good one.
Do you get anxious or anything? Because I feel like the reason why I ask that is you write very... I feel like a lot of especially your lyrics are kind of poetic, and it's sad music. It's melancholy. It's heavy music. It's melancholy music. There's a lot of different aspects to the music that you put out. And I feel like if I were making music like you, I would be kind of anxious at times to see how people would take it, because I feel like it's kind of I don't know where I'm going with this, but
like super personal or something.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know, because at that point, by the time Below the House came out, I've already been playing a couple of those songs live for a year or two, if not longer. Probably about 3 years almost at some point, because I started playing Dull Knife Parts 1 and 2 out in November, December 2014, and the album came out in March 2017. So I was already playing a bunch of that stuff live. There were a couple videos outlined, so I guess there was some already teasers out there, so it wasn't just so like, hey, here's this brand new fresh thing. So I didn't think about it that way, but just to finally have it out there, because like I said, I sat on it for months before I even gave it to Flenser, and then I had to get it mastered. Then we had to worry about artwork and stuff. So it was a process. And then at that point, I'm just like, I just want it out there. That's, I think, more of it.
Gotcha. And so I listened to the album for the first time. Whiskey and Wine comes on. I'm just like, holy shit. And I think, if I remember correctly, did you release that as a single for
Yes, that was the first thing they put up. And that was Flenser's choice.
Yeah. And so it's after hearing that... Whiskey and Wine for the first time as a single, I've decided to no longer listen to singles. Not because it was I absolutely love that song, but my anticipation going into listening to Below the House was it was going to be music just like Whiskey and Wine.
Right. That was the kind of cool throw off of it. Because on the other hand, we could have done Warmth of You, and everyone would have thought it was super pop record, and then all of a sudden Whiskey and Wine hits you the minute you start listening to the album.
What made you want to open the album with Whiskey and Wine?
I think it was just more about just like the power statement of it. It's just, here it is. I think that's the best. My friend described the record as like a roller coaster almost.
It's such a goddamn roller coaster ride, man.
And when he said that, and I said that makes sense then. It's just the ups and downs of life. But I felt like Whiskey and Wine was just like that punch.
Even within Whiskey and Wine, that song is like such a roller coaster because it's like a slow build up in the beginning and it's like super fucking abrasive, right? And then you come in singing and it's like, holy shit. And then the lyrics to that song, and then it ends on this like kind of just subdued like xylophone sounding like synth. It's such a great song.
Yeah, I don't even know how I came about doing that either, because that was one of the only songs from the record that was really just like, all right, I got this loop. What am I going to do with it? And then as I was recording it, I was breaking parts down and redoing things. So like the glockenspiel part was just totally came up with it later on in time. So
yeah, that song, I feel like it's a punch in the face. And then the next song, I can't remember the name of the next song.
Threadbare's neck.
Thank you. Yes. And it's just kind of like, dun, 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 dun. It's kind of very subdued. So it's just like, okay, kind of could take a breather for a second. But yeah, that it really is a roller coaster ride, that album from start to finish.
I like that. I like being able to do things like that. And I try to do my live sets kind of like that too, where there's peaks and valleys.
I absolutely love Dull Knife Part 1 and Part 2. I look at them, and I don't know if this is how you wanted them to be viewed, but I just look at them as one long song.
It is. I think it is, but there is clear. I mean, because the chord progressions are all kind of around each other, but I wanted them. To me, they do feel like different songs because where it breaks. So that's why on the record they're together. But when I play them live now, I usually begin the set with Dull Knife 1 and end with Dull Knife 2. So it like shows that they're very clearly different things, but they are the same thing.
Yeah, I always listen to them. Even if I don't listen to Below the House like in full, I'll always listen to Part 1 and Part 2 together. I can't listen to them separately. And I love the build-up in Part 2 is so awesome. Could you talk about those two songs? Because I know the lyrics are different, obviously. Could you talk about what those songs are about?
I think Part 1 is mostly about just feeling like even though I'm living in a space, it just didn't feel like home. Didn't feel like mine. I didn't feel comfortable there, and I think that was the biggest part of it. And then Part 2 was just kind of like a daydream I had working on a roof one day, and you hear like kids screaming and stuff in the wind and stuff, and that's kind of where I was thinking. I was like, oh, it's friends or an old girlfriend calling me back to New Jersey, and I was like really homesick, and it was like that first week or two where I just come back to Pennsylvania, and I wasn't like fully even moved to there yet. So that's where the lyrics for Part 2 came from, which is like a daydream on top of a roof in the morning, and you can see the fog coming across like all the houses in town. But that's what those songs are about.
How much attention or time do you devote to writing your lyrics? Some of your songs may not have a ton of lyrics in them, but I do feel like some of the lyrics are very, very poetic, very beautiful lyrics. So how much time do you devote typically to putting together the lyrics for your music?
I think that's probably the least amount of time I spend. I jot some things down real quick. I'll say them over and over in my head for a while, and I might make some quick changes here and there. But in my brain, I'm not, like literature based or anything. Like I don't have a grand scheme for anything. Like listening to Cody talk about, Autumn Pool last night, and even as a friends, he talks about like he's got this he could write this bio about like, oh, this 12-minute piece is based on this, and it's like really in depth and everything. And I'm like, I don't do that. Like for me, it's just like, ugh, I puke it out and here it is. And I can't really always just like, yeah, well, this is the deeper meaning of it. Cause like the deeper meaning might be deeper to me and I might never explain it to some people, but it's very much on the paper. It's there. You could see it or you could make your own interpretation of it. And that's kind of where I try to write lyrics.
The other thing too that I really enjoy about your music is that even if you didn't like for me, if I listen to a song and I don't understand the lyrics, just the atmosphere of a song can be very like, I don't know if I want to say emotional. It could be a very intense experience, which is something that I really enjoy because, I mean, and the lyrics just add to that for me.
And I think that's exactly when I remember doing Leaving. I remember saying to her, when I was working on Leaving, I had a friend that he was probably the only person I ever listened to them. And he was the one who pushed me to finish them. But I even told him, I said, it's not because Leaving, I mean, there must be like 10 lyrics on the entire album. I mean, there's probably more, but I told him the idea was I want the music to sound how I feel, and the words are just like another layer. And so they're not top game. They're just kind of like there as, like you said, an extra like little thing.
And so Below the House came out March of last year, and then it was like 3 or 4 months later, you released the Mattawan collection.
Yes.
And I didn't even realize that those were going to be released. It must have been like on Facebook or something, maybe a week or two before, seeing an announcement that, yeah, this is going to be coming out. I was just like, holy shit. And I really loved the songs on that release. What made you want to release Below the House and then just a few months later release the Mattawan Collected Works?
I think the Mattawan collection was actually done a year prior to that. It just kind of happened that way. I guess it helps for a record label to have a little backing of a bigger album to put out the old stuff behind it too. But I just really wanted the out of print stuff because so many people were like, hey, are you going to re-release this tape? And I'm like, I'm not going to re-release a tape that I did 75 copies of that has like demo versions and stuff. But I figured if I got everything together on a collection and remastered it and stuff, it would be a lot better just so it's out there. And now people are like, where's the LP? And I'm like, do you know, it's so expensive to make LPs. And I'm like, this is going to have to be like a 3 or 4 like disc LP. And I'm like, that box is going to be like 60 some bucks and then no one's going to buy it. So CDs are cheap. I'm still a fan of CDs because of that. They're cheaper, but I like LPs for the artwork.
Yeah. I mean, and because there's like 20 songs on that release,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
I remember when I saw it.
Some of them were like 8-9 minutes long.
Yeah, dude. I remember when I saw it, I was like, holy shit, man. So we just got Below the House and what is that? Like 9 or 10 songs on that album. And then another 20 songs is like, holy crap, this is awesome.
Yeah, but those, I mean, all that stuff was out there. They were on my Bandcamp and stuff, but it was more about just getting not unreleased, but out of print stuff. There was a couple unreleased things on there and just getting it out there.
I'm so bad when it comes to Bandcamp. I know I should be more active on listening to music on Bandcamp. I'm such a Spotify guy because it's just so easy that I just always listen to stuff on Spotify. So pretty much all of your stuff at this point,
or a good and that was the other thing too, is with Mattawan, none of that stuff was on Spotify or anything like that. So it was just a way to get it on to more streaming services too.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the Flenser because have they put out pretty much all of your music at this point?
At this point now, yes. Just about. I mean, I'll do some tapes on my own and I've done some stuff with other people, and Enemies List actually put Leaving out, but now Flenser has Leaving, so.
That record label is hands down at this point my favorite record label, and I feel like I don't know if there's been a release of theirs in the last like 2-3 years that I haven't enjoyed, at least to some degree. How did you wind up getting hooked up with that label?
In 2011, I was trying to book a West Coast tour, and someone just hooked me up with Jonathan, like, oh, he does shows. And the Flenser was just starting out then. And we just became friends, talked on the internet for a few years, and he'd always be like, so when are you doing a second album? And I'm like, I'm not doing a second album. And that was like my period where I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to play these songs live. And then about 2013, I was out in California again playing some shows with Wreck and Reference. So he came out because Wreck and Reference was on their label. And I guess he heard me talk to someone like, yeah, I just got to finish some vocal parts for this. He goes, what? You have a second album? You're doing it? I was like, oh, yeah, I did. So that's how we got started talking, and just from there. But, I mean, we were friends prior to it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that record label, I feel like, aside from Enemy List, I don't think there's any other label that really would be such a perfect fit for the kind of music that you play and the kind of stuff that they're putting out.
Yeah, Enemy's List really isn't a label anymore. It's just like a thing.
Because, yeah, it's the dude from Have a Nice Life, right?
Yeah,
Right, Dan?
They don't really release anything anymore. It's just their T-shirts, their merch and stuff. And because the Flenger does all the Have a Nice Life stuff now.
And the Flenser, correct me if I'm wrong, just released the vinyl version of Quietly, or will be releasing the vinyl version.
Yesterday was the release date.
There you go. So I love that release, and it's one of my favorite songs of yours, Night Swimming.
Yes.
I have not seen you play that song live yet, so I don't know if you do play it live.
I've never played it live.
Oh, you got to play that song live. It's so goddamn good. I
could do it.
Oh, could you talk a little bit about that song and like the meaning behind that song to you?
That was a long time ago. I had to even think about the lyrics for that one. But I remember recording it because I even remember sitting at my drum kit and doing like the little like. And a lot of people thought that was drum machine, but it's actually like a floor tom and a snare. I was listening to a ton of Low and a ton of PJ Harvey, so I don't know. It's one of my favorite songs too I've ever done, and I listened to that one quite a bit. But I'm just like, I don't know how I could do it. I just don't know how I could do it.
Yeah, that song is, I don't know what it is about that song, man. It gets me every freaking time I listen to it. It's just a very impactful song.
I'd have to actually sit with the lyrics now and think about that one. Because clearly it was about me dating this girl for a while and just like our little turmoil and constant mental abuse to each other back and forth, and just it was just rough. I mean, we're friends now. Like we haven't dated in years and years and years, but we can still talk and we're friends now. But I remember playing a couple of the songs from Quietly last night and just being like, huh. I was like, I'm right back in that spot, and I don't want to be back in that spot anymore.
So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I recently did an interview with Tyler Kershaw, who's the lead singer of Funeral Advantage, and we were talking about a release that he put out last year called Please Help Me. And that was written on the heels of like a breakup and him being homeless. And so he's telling me that he has difficulty listening to those songs because of the experience, and which got me thinking like, shit, do you ever have like moments where, I guess clearly you do, where you're listening to your music or you're playing your music and it brings back memories for you or emotions?
When the Quietly was a cassette first with 3 songs on it, and then Enemy's List decided he put out like a CD version with some of the other releases that came out at the time. I almost didn't want him to put it out because we were going through that breakup, and I'm like going through and listening to the songs, get everything ready. And it's like, I don't want any part of this. Came out, did whatever. And then when we decided to put Quietly on LP, I was listening to it again after a couple of years. I'm like, all right, I'm in a spot now where I can handle these. But yeah, it does become that way a little bit sometimes.
Do you ever get like that with like other music that's not your own? Like just stuff
all the time.
Yeah, right.
Like I said earlier, I'm a music nerd, and I attach most of like my timeline of my life to this album came out then. I was listening to that a lot now, or I was seeing that band with this person, this person, and this person. So yeah, I do it all the time. I could conjure up things from the past just by listening to music easily.
I love Giles Corey, but shit, dude, sometimes like listening to some of the songs off of that album, like, holy crap, I need to like, I can't do this right now. This is too much. Or like that Midwife release last year, R2D, is it? No, R2D. I was about to say R2D2. RTD Part 2. Like that song gets me, and like sometimes I have to be in the right like mental state to listen to it. It's a phenomenal song.
I just saw something. I think she's touring with a full band now.
Oh my god, dude! I love
and I'm playing
that
with her
album.
in Denver, so I can't wait. She does another project called Sister
So
Grotto.
good.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
so good.
Yeah, but yes, you're right. That record, it hits you, man.
So I feel like a nerd because I've pestered you a few times on Tumblr, like at picking your brain about Below the House. And I remember we just got to talking and you had told me about Midwife, and I had no clue that she released that LP last year. After you told me, I listened to it and was like blown away by that LP, and I listened to it a shit ton after.
Yeah, I listen to that record constantly now, and I can't get over how good it was.
So good. I can't remember the name of the last song in that album.
I'm very bad with song titles.
Yeah, I'm so bad too. But that last song in that album is incredible. From start to finish, it's an incredible album.
Yeah, I Madeline is just like on another level.
Yeah. And now, with Dull Knife Part 1 and, or not Dull Knife Part 1, excuse me, do you feel that playing certain songs can be, even if they were written in an emotional state or an emotional time for you, can be a cathartic release?
Oh, 100%. I think when I was starting to play some of these songs live from this album, it was a little more destructive. I would get into it now, and now I kind of put myself into a zone, but it's like just because I'm feeling it, but it's not coming from a place of like catharsis anymore. I mean, it does, but I've been playing these songs for a couple of years, so it's like there's pieces of it, but it's worked out.
Yeah. What is the significance about 29 August 2010? That date
2012.
2012, excuse me. The significance of that date in relation to the song.
The events spoke on it happened that day, and it's just when I wrote it, like I said, when I write lyrics, sometimes I'll just be like phone notes or something, and that was the date, and I just left it, and I liked the way it looked, but that's what it was. It was that date, and I remember driving home, hurrying up, writing it in my notes, the quick lyrics and stuff. So that's where it was.
Nice. So I got to see your show last year. I drove to Boston. The show you did with Have a Nice Life.
Yeah.
Which was, holy shit, man. That was like hands down one of the coolest, funnest shows I've ever seen. Like Elizabeth Colorwheel played that show, and they were fucking awesome.
Is so good.
Yeah, dude, they were so awesome. And then you had played, and your set was incredible. And then that's the first time I ever got to see Have a Nice Life. And I was fucking blown away by them. So between Elizabeth Colorwheel, your band, like your set, and then Have a Nice Life, I walked out of that, because it's the Middle East, right?
Middle East, yeah.
I walked out of there like on fucking cloud nine, dude.
You know what? And they were, Have a Nice Life were good that night. The sound was a little weird. They were good, but at the end of September, when they played the last one in Brooklyn, you could tell they were a band now because they were practicing. I made jokes. I'm like, cool, you guys are like super tight now and you're going to not do anything for a while. But that show was good. But I think for me, seeing Have a Nice Life, the New York show was 10 times wilder. It was like a hardcore show. There was like kids like climbing on top of each other to get to the mic. Ugh. It was like crazy. But yes, it felt so good. I mean, I saw them on the 3 shows that they did years ago with the drum machine and stuff. But seeing them live again, I'm just like, I mean, I dove into a bunch of people during waiting for black metal records.
I was very upset that I couldn't make it. Because did they play Philly as well?
They played Philly, and I did that too.
I was really bummed that I couldn't make it to any of the other shows besides the one in Boston.
They played like a secret basement show a night or two before the Philly show. I almost drove up for it. They told me the address. I almost drove, and it was a Friday. I was just going to leave work and go. But I was like, oh, I'm going to see him tomorrow. So,
and it's kind of funny. Like literally, it was. I want to say it was like no more than 3 weeks. It was probably like 2 weeks prior to when this show was announced. I was listening to. It might have been Blackwing. It might have been It was one of the other like one of the projects that Dan Barrett is in. And I remember saying to my wife, like, shit, man, I never got to see Have a Nice Life. This sucks. Like, I'm never going to get a chance to see them now. This blows. And then it was announced that they were doing that show, and I, like, jumped on getting a ticket to Boston.
Yeah, and that was the thing, because they were announced to play that one fest out on the West Coast, like, a year ahead of time. And I kept being like, come on. Or Tim on his personal Facebook was like, we want to do some warm-up shows around that. I was like, I got you. I got this. I will book these. So that's how that came about.
You also put out music, right, under Glowing Window Recordings,
yes.
right?
I also used to do it under Music Ruins Lives.
So I want to talk about that because you released Paolo's LP last year.
Yeah.
Which, holy fuck, dude, that's another LP that incredible from start to finish.
That band is one of my absolute favorites. I've seen them only live twice. I think, I'm trying to think, this week or next week, they're playing their first show in 2 years. They don't really have their shit together in terms of being a band, but they are one of the absolute best bands. And I feel like they weren't really a band that played live, so like the record didn't go anywhere. And I'm not very good at getting press, I'll admit that. But I still even have some copies of it left. But I wanted that band to be huge, but they, you know, some of those guys have other jobs and stuff, and their one guitarist is in an awesome black and grind band called Malavich that's doing a lot of stuff now. So, yeah, but Paolo. Whew.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how the hell I found out about that band. I actually might have found them through Bandcamp, just like searching tags. And I listened to, like, they released those other, like, EPs, which are fucking awesome.
That last EP before the album is one of my favorite things they've ever done.
Dude, it's so goddamn good.
I played in Birmingham, Alabama, which is 2 hours from Atlanta, and they got themselves on that show, and that's how I heard them. And I remember sitting and watching them, just being like, "This band is like the best fucking slowcore." They make fun of me. I'm like, "You guys are like a slowcore emo band." I was like, "You guys have that, like all those elements of like the cool like '90s like kind of space rocky emo bands, but you're also a slowcore band." So they're so good.
When you got to listen to that LP for the first time, what'd you think of it?
I mean, I'm still blown away by it. Like, the songwriting on it is just, like, phenomenal. And their melodies and everything, they're constant. Like, they do, like, that thing, too, where they get caught on, like, I don't even know what you would call it. I call it, like, a vamp, where they're just, like, kind of playing, like, the same couple chords over and over. And I'm just like, they're so good. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, like, it's hard to describe.
And so you had later this summer, you've got a tour coming up, and you're going to be playing with Drowse, who, shit, man, that's another incredible album, Cold Air, that was released this year, right? Was it the beginning of 2018?
I think it was February.
Yeah, which, goddamn, that album's incredible. How do you feel about this coming tour and that you get to play some shows with Drowse?
I mean, I just asked Kyle to be on it anyways because I just want to hang out with him. But the funny part about Drowse is in 2013, I played a house show in Portland, and they played. The Drowse live band is like a super heavy shoegaze band. They get into like weird krautrock things, so it's not like the records.
Really?
And apparently they do have a live band record that's recorded that might be coming out.
Whoa, so like,
it's completely different. And they have a revolving cast of members who can come and play with them.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that album, like the first time I listened to it, that's another album that's like, dude, that album is fucking intense, man.
Right. And the thing was about that, so I played that show with them. I talked to them a little bit. And I think on Tumblr, like a year later, I was just like searching my own Erie tags. And that tape came up, and I loved the cover, his first tape, Songs to Sleep On. And I went and I listened to a track, and I just bought the tape. And he started emailing me, and I was like, I put two and two together. I was like, oh, yeah, you guys were awesome. And he goes, and that's when he started talking to me about like, oh, this tape's a little bit different. And so that's where the myth came from, or not myth, but just the way he was explaining, like, yeah, you know, I do the live band, but I can't do the recordings live. But I don't know. Kyle is one of my favorite musicians and writers, and his girlfriend, Maya, she does a band called Floating Room that he's also part of. She's also
awesome.
See, and I love Floating Room stuff, but you can now if you listen to the older Drowse stuff to this, you could tell that Maya and him are like working together super insanely, because now I can hear her influence on the Drowse stuff, and I can hear his influence on the Floating Room stuff. So like that group and the whole group of friends, Parker, who plays guitar in live Drowse, He does a lot of the mastering. He does all these other projects like Italics and Magic DJ and stuff like the stuff and their drummer Tyler they were called it's called Being Alone now, but I forget, they were calling it Wilt at first, but it's like a super awesome like duster sounding band. I'm like, that whole group of like guys and girls are just like amazing.
Yeah, I know there again, like I said, I won't listen to singles anymore because I know there have been some singles that have been released for the Floating Room album. I don't know if it's been released yet. I know it's coming out
yesterday. The Floating Room.
Yeah, I got to listen to it because I've been very, very excited to hear it. Because that one, was it 2 years ago or so? The previous like Floating Room album was really good.
Yes, that was one of my favorite records that year.
Yeah, it was a really good LP. Any favorite releases of yours this year? Just other stuff that you've been listening to that you've been really enjoying from the year so far?
I have a pile of stuff, of brand new stuff I haven't even opened yet. But my friend showed me this band called The Armed, and that's what I'm really into right now.
I've never heard them before.
They're a UK band, apparently. I don't know too much about them, actually. I just know he sent a record to me, and I bought it. And Ben Kohler from Converge plays drums on the record. It's just super insane. It's like grindcore with synths, and I don't know. It's wild. It almost reminds me of Genghis Tron a little bit. I don't know if you knew that band. Dude,
I saw Genghis Tron years ago. It was with, coincidentally, I'm wearing a Rise and Fall shirt. It was with Rise and Fall, Converge. I can't remember the name of the venue. It was in Brooklyn. Dude, they were fucking awesome, Genghis Tron. They had these crazy like LEDs set up. And it was wild. That was such an incredible show.
So that band, The Armed, reminds me of them, but a little less electronic and a little more like maybe Dillinger at their more insane parts. So I don't know. There's just something about that record, start to finish. It just has like this flow to it, and there's cool things going on. I'm pretty sure Kerpaloo recorded it, but it doesn't sound like a Kerpaloo record, and that's what makes me love it even more. I don't know. There's something about this record. I was listening to it coming down to the show last night.
It's called The Armed?
Yeah, the name of the band's called The Armed, and I think the record's called Only Love. It's just wild.
Nice, I'll have to check it out. So you've got this tour coming up. Anything else planned for the future for Planning for Burial?
I know right after the tour, I'm doing another quick little run with Wax Idols. And then after that, I'm just going to sit in the basement and try to work on some stuff. Maybe do shows here and there, but I'm not doing any like long-term planning unless like something ridiculous comes up like, hey, you want to come to Australia and play? And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Nice. So after today, if someone has not listened to your music before, or even if someone has, but they just want to listen to some more Planning for Burial stuff, where could they find your music?
Spotify, iTunes, Bandcamp, planningforburial at bandcamp.com. It's kind of everywhere now. That's the nice part about it. And that's, again, why I said before, like the Madawan release, it was just nice to get all that stuff together because now it could be in a spot.
Sweet. All right. Thank you so much, man. This was really good time.
Thank you. I hope I got some good answers for you.
Yeah. All right, man. Take it easy.
Thank you.
And there you have it, folks. That's my conversation with Thom Wasluck of Planning for Burial. That was super fun. That was a really good time sitting down with Thom and picking his brain. I think it's cool that we both lived in that area around the same time. We probably wound up going to similar types of shows. I don't have the fondest memories of my time living in Pennsylvania, but one of the things that I do appreciate about my years there is that that's where I discovered punk and hardcore and underground music. And I got to go to a lot of really awesome shows and see a lot of really cool bands. So that's the one thing that I do appreciate about my time there. And I think it's cool that, Thom and I, again, we're probably checking out similar shows at that point in time. I really appreciated being able to sit down and talk to Thom about Below the House. And I loved when he was telling me about Dull Knife Part 1 and Dull Knife Part 2 and the lyrics behind those songs. And I thought it was super interesting that the lyrics for Dull Knife Part 2 came about one day from him working on a roof, wind blowing, and he could hear people talking and just kind of daydreaming from there. And that's how the lyrics came about. That's one of the things that I enjoy about this podcast, being able to find that type of information out from individuals that, you might not be able to find out anywhere else. I thought that was really cool and interesting. I will make sure to add links in the show notes to how you could check out Thom's music. All of his stuff is on Spotify and on Bandcamp, but I'll make sure to add links so you could check his stuff out. Definitely check out his record label, Glowing Window Recordings. As Thom and I discussed, he put out Paolo's record last year, and damn, one of my favorite albums of last year. It's a phenomenal album, so definitely check that out. And also check out Autumn Pool, because Thom, I believe, put out an Autumn Pool album. So check those out. Make sure to follow Create and Destroy on social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr, all at Create and Destroy Podcast. And then on Twitter at CreateDestroy_. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in today. As always, get out there, create something cool, and I will see you next time.